Good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing great. Welcome to the webinar on how to optimize supplier management, boost compliance and efficiency. I'm Kirsten Ponert here at SoftExpert North America, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today to host this event specifically designed for those who want to improve their supplier management, enhancing processes, strengthening compliance, and increasing operational efficiency in every day. For those that aren't familiar with SoftExpert, we are a global company with nearly 30 years of experience. We operate in more than 50 countries, serving over 3,000 customers. Our flagship solution, SoftExpert Suite, is a comprehensive platform that helps organizations manage regulatory compliance, innovation, and digital transformation in a fully integrated way. Now, I'd like to introduce our special guest, Ed Podizak. Ed, welcome to our webinar. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Kirsten, good day to you. And I would like to observe a few things here that we will be covering today, but I'll even kind of take a step backwards after this and explain why we felt these would be useful topics, key insights, things that the attendees can take advantage of in their thinking process for managing suppliers efficiently and effectively. So we will touch on the supplier corrective action, kind of an anomaly or an occurrence resolution concept there. So that'll be an important part of what we'll be discussing today. We've always wanted to keep the communication channels open for suppliers. So that's why we're going to take a quick look at how both internal users and your suppliers can have access to the documents they need to know how to do business with your organization. And that can occur for suppliers through what we refer to as a portal. Very easy to establish. It has permissions and roles and all sorts of things that would limit a supplier to only being able to see what's relevant to them, even though there could be a general folder for, here's how you do business with my company, Acme Corporation, for example. Then we're going to take a look at what's involved, what can be done to help streamline and make repeatable evaluating and onboarding suppliers. Then we'll touch on supplier performance. There's going to be several different views that we'll take a look at and why that's important. Supplier process management, and that is the whole life cycle and what we can do to help automate certain key areas of activity around that. And then, excuse me, the approved supplier list. That's always helpful, right? I've got to go find something relatively quickly. It may not be an elaborate custom product or even a specific kind of service, but it may be, I just need it almost like a commodity. Who can I go get this or that from that's already approved? And then finally, risk assessment. Very important. We want to know whether there's a storm brewing on the horizon with the supplier, and having the information, the metrics available can be very helpful. So that's what we'll cover today, Kirsten.
Very well. And before our live demonstration, just a quick reminder, during the webinar, feel free to send your questions and comments via the chat, and we'll save some time at the end to answer them thoroughly. Hey, Ed, let's get started.
All right. Well, if you all will indulge me, I'm going to ask a few questions just as thought joggers. I have had quite a number of years, well over 2 decades in manufacturing, both from a product development and then operations and technical sales standpoint. And boy, oh boy, did we have some challenges when it came to knowing what was going on with suppliers. How many of you out there would say the biggest thing that I don't like in manufacturing are surprises? We make plans, we do our best to monitor, and yet still with so many moving parts in manufacturing, so to speak, pun intended, that, you know, what's going on? Oh no, where did that come from? And too often, for my experience, my colleagues and we'd be marching along and having a monthly review or whatever. Keyword monthly, not such a great thing in some cases. But we would be surprised, and they would be expensive surprises. So what we want to do is make sure that we do have, let's put it positively. We always want to make sure, I think, and who here would like to make sure that we have good quality products coming to us, raw materials, components, things of that nature, services that work properly. Those are important. That we have enough of those important elements coming to us from our providers. And finally, that when we do need to communicate with our suppliers, whether it's through planning or some sort of a reaction to an occurrence, what in the world, is going on, so we can be clear and communicate our expectations well as we're waiting for response from the supplier. And then we have ways of identifying and measuring that. So that's what we'll be covering today. And with that, I'm going to switch over here to demonstration in live working software. It is our demonstration company, and we're going to walk through the life cycle of working with suppliers. And again, I point out that you don't have to have all of these. You may be attempting to do this with existing tools. Might be a spreadsheet. It might be a portal of some kind, internal, that is this supplier red, green, or yellow? But what goes into that? And is it in real time? The other part of a surprise that got to us was we would have challenges from time to time on a daily basis. We'd have our first thing, start of shift meetings. We'd have our end of shift meetings. We'd have a weekly meeting to kick off the week. We'd have a closeout for the week. But very often, those were somewhat superficial. And when it came time to have our monthly review, that's where the big surprises came. Oh, my goodness. And that's where the blood pressure went up, and the executive team, we were always wrestling with what happened, who done it, what are we going to do about it? And sadly, it was often too late to be as effective as we know we should have been. So let's get walking through some of the tools that we believe can help mitigate the risk. That's an important concept in today's quality mindset and supplier management mindset, is how do we mitigate risk? Well, one way is, before we agree to bring a supplier into our supply base, we have some evaluation activities. We're either in analysis or not. I'm going to make this one click bigger to make it just hopefully a little easier to see all the font. But we post a status here, and when it comes time, well, how did we get there? We know where the supplier is. We could even list a commodity type that they provide. But let's take a quick look at how we did that. And we have available here, and the idea is to have like a workflow, an automated process that is repeatable. There's a data capture survey in this case. Could be self-completed by the supplier, the provider. It could be done by someone in your supplier quality or purchasing or procurement or materials planning, or however you want to look at it. What are some of the important things for us? Certifications, that's like a pre-qualification, right? They've been audited. Then what does that look like? Well, it's not required that it looks just like this, but this would be an example. We have, we've asked the supplier to fill in the form. We're looking at it. We're analyzing it. We're making a judgment. We will indeed have, in some cases, buttons here to indicate whether we agree, disagree, or we have to ask more questions. So all of that can be well automated. And this flow chart that I had on screen is drag and drop in nature, as is creating this form. so that if you have an Excel sheet or a Word document or something like that, or a some form of survey, we can replicate that, and you have that information in the records then. And you can renew this as often as you see fit, every 6 months, once a year, every other year, whatever is useful to your organization. And so, presuming that someone has passed, we have the ability, and that's how we triggered it. There's a button here that started that whole review evaluation process. We've now have them listed as approved, and therefore they've joined the elite list, so to speak, of suppliers. And this list can be any number of organizations that you're working with. And so all of this is useful in that we have ready access. One of the things that we often did is we got very good at, and as I get a little bit more experienced, a little bit more mature in industry, I would say, hey, where did I put that? Where did I put that? Even in our home life, right? Where did I put that thing? I put it where I knew I would find it. Where the heck is it? Well, SoftExpert's all about making sure that can be easily brought to the surface, quickly found and reviewed. So again, for a particular example organization that we're working with, and we can have a status across the whole list, and we could, this is by company type, but we can take a look at and see what's going on with a supplier. And I have a feeling that this supplier, I think I would be more inclined to take a look at this one. This being a demonstration company, sometimes things are not quite completed. But as we're looking, the system is pulling together all the information that is available to review relative to this one supplier. Again, bringing it out from the archives, so to speak, the filing system somewhere. And it's all contained and managed through our software. We have the basic information, where they are, what we know of them in general. We can have electronic files, which would be either documents, and we can see a particular list of documents if we wish, that are very uniquely relevant here. We can see the attachments, perhaps a certificate, documents in general, if we're pointing to them as here's how we work with suppliers that provide services such as coating or painting or plating or some other packaging type activity. We can have what documents from our system would define how we choose to do business with them. We do have a place to put other evaluation records here, so that's important. And then we even have the ability to link to records in the rest of SoftExpert, so that if we have conducted an inspection, we have issued a survey to them, we are doing a more structured audit, other things here. So it is a one-stop place to look at a dashboard, if you will, on this particular supplier. All right, so now we're going to move forward here to look and note the supplier certifications. So if we go ahead and take a look at, let's say this particular asset supplier, we could go back to that screen where we just were, but let's take a look here. And we're going to see files that we've received from them that indicate their status as being certified in whatever industry standard, international standard, regulatory compliance that they have. So we have that ability to see that all the time and stay right on top of it. And so we also have records of what certifications are on file, so we can know that, and we could even bring to the surface right away how long they're valid until they expire. So we can have an expiry list from this. Again, having it all at your fingertips. I know when I would ask colleagues when I was responsible for planning a new product launch, if something hiccuped with a supplier and it was a non-critical component, what we would do is we would ask, is there another company that's already qualified to provide a particular widget that we might need? And to have others available who were compliant already, because many of our customers were asking, were they compliant from an automotive or medical device or environmental health and safety viewpoint, whatever it is, we could find that quickly here in our case. One area that's I hear more and more about, of course, is scorecards. How do we view suppliers from what most companies would agree are the three critical viewpoints? One, we've been looking at certifications and compliance. That's important. Then we have here the classic quality metrics, delivery metrics. How have they been on time or not? We can have metrics that we draw from, in many cases, an ERP system, enterprise resource planning. So the records from receiving, the records from releases and delivery records, those types of things can all be gathered, and this is updated in real time. We often would make a comment among our own discussions about, wouldn't it be nice to be able to go to lunch and come back and see latest data, half an hour later. So this can be updated quite regularly, even within a day. We occasionally would deal with companies that had something new that was coming, and it would just drop in, and either they were recovering and improving. In this case, we narrowed it down to one particular supplier, but we can have many. And we've noted this Dunder Mifflin company. They happen to be indirect materials, right? But there's some issue here with quality. Have no idea at the moment. We could do a deep dive further, but so I would like to say that, Kirsten, we have our finger on the pulse of what's going on with suppliers, and it's good to know. And we can even have notifications go out. So if someone falls below a certain threshold, or they go over a negative threshold, how many occurrences happen in a period of time, beep, 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 here comes the warning in email to alert the relevant team members, watch out, we've got something going on here. And so rather than wait, I mentioned about that monthly review. Well, I've been in too many meetings when someone would be talking as we would go through a list and say, well, this company is now in yellow. What's going on? So we would have 5 different answers. 5 different people would have 5 different viewpoints because we were managing with a spreadsheet and emails. Well, here it's all in a common database. It can be in different languages, as needed. We work with about 20 different languages. So that's very relevant. Make it easy for people if we have an international operation or we have a blend of different cultures in our own organization here within the US, for example. But someone would say, well, when did this happen? Oh, it happened on the 5th of the month. Well, hey, it's the 30th. Why are we talking about it now? Why didn't I know? And so we would have the COO saying, why didn't I know about that earlier when we could have done something? When I could have called the CEO of Dunder Mifflin and had a conversation with them, if that's what was appropriate. Or why couldn't the SQE leader, the supplier quality engineering leader, have gotten in touch with them and worked with them? And we already would have had, a recovery, a non-conformance recovery. And we'll talk a little bit about some of that here. Supplier results. We always want to know results. Well, different organizations like to see it in different ways. So we can have here RMAs by supplier. We can look at non-conformances, RMAs being return material authorizations. How many have we had to ask for to return product to a supplier? The non-conformances, where we have to get them involved to answer the classic 8D or corrective action report. PPAPs, if we're working with someone on a new program or new products, new technologies, what's going on with their PPAP submissions, inspection results, CAPAs, corrective action, preventative action reports. These may start out as internal, and some organizations would say, well, I look at NCs, others would say CARs, others would say CAPAs. So whatever your terminology is, typically CAPAs are more business process oriented, but some organizations have supplier CAPAs, and that's where they begin to manage product issues as well. And then we can have different formats, bar charts, histograms, Paretos. I like Paretos. There's a lot about artificial intelligence, and we do have artificial intelligence baked into our software, but I like Paretos, very visual, very easy to see. So if one of these is quite high, we can begin to focus very quickly. So I spoke briefly about making available how we want to do business with our suppliers, how they have to comply with our expectations. One of the interesting things is, we used to talk about having suppliers come in through some sort of a portal, and every time they would access it, they would have to pay, or they would have to get their own special app, pay for software and pay for a license. We can open portals and make them readily available so that suppliers have access. What this would have saved us had we had it in my past industry experience, is if a supplier emailed it to me, and anybody here missed an email, missed reading it, we want to be confident that emails are read. If we send them, they're going to be seen and read. Okay. But it is possible that we got distracted and we skipped over one or two emails, and somebody may have been sending to us a notice or asking a question, a notice of, hey, we were having a challenge with a certain part of our process, and we cannot deliver everything that we committed to for yet tomorrow. So we can ship some tomorrow, ship some over the weekend, ship some on Monday. All that logistics management that's important, right? To keep the process going, your Kanban or your MRP satisfied, by the time product has to leave your facility. So we want to make all of this available, and rather than relying on an email coming to my inbox, and then I have to remember and prioritize to come and type it in a software technology, and then perhaps start a process or just put it in a spreadsheet. All of that is fraught with risk. What if I get distracted? What if something happens? What if I go on vacation for a week? So what's important is having a supplier be able to open something. So if I want to see this, it's a click, the system will respond. It will provide me the ability to show them our procedure, our process, our work instruction, a form that they may need, to fill out, what have you. So that can be brought back into focus. And we can also do a search. So if I wanted to see something having to do with safety, let's see if we have one. So even though safety is not in the title, we have full text searching. So it's one thing for a supplier to come to my system and look, but they don't know all of my coding or how I identify specific document records with my scheme. So now I just put in the word safety, and each of these has the word safety in it somewhere. It's in the document, technical information, or it's in the case of a PDF, somewhere in here, we would be looking for the word safety. There's 3 occurrences of the word safety. I didn't have to know that. I didn't have to see it in the title or the ID. So we worked to make it very straightforward for the supplier to find it in the words. And I would have expected to see, some little highlight here, and it probably is. I'm just missing it in my interest in moving along. But safety is indeed embedded here, and we know that it can be found. So that's another interesting capability when it comes to document management. And we can have these generalized ones, but we could also, if a supplier is involved in a program, they could have access only to the program that they're involved with and the drawings that they need to see. So all of that can be limited by access rights. So that's another thing, that you can allow them to come in, see the general, but then the specifics are unique to their situation. And you don't want them seeing information for a program they're not involved in. And that's managed through access rights, folders, if you will, these categories. Moving along here, we took a look at, these are the charts, the different style examples of charts that we have. So let's take a look here now at, I duplicated a couple of things here. So we have now our quick look at PPAP approval. If a supplier is involved in a new program, or they're providing a new product to an existing program, we used to ask them to provide relevant documents, dimensional results, product samples that could come with their own report. The PSW, of course, PFMEA, failure modes and effects analysis for process. Whatever you consider relevant, and the level 1, 2, and 3, would imply more about having to find, whether there's samples or not, for example. We can go off and look at a PFMEA from a supplier, evaluate it, and have it in a review process. It's a flow. So we can have a status. Are we planning? Are we executing? What have you, as far as their submissions and whether they're approved or not. When we get to the SCAR, the SCAR, the corrective action report, we can look at it from a financial standpoint individually. Is there any cost that we plan to recover? Or are we in an analysis state, or are we rejecting how they're responding to us? So if we took a look here at a particular SCAR, this report's going to open and we're going to see the information that's necessary. In this particular case, we have a processing fee that's being applied, and therefore their total cost. We can go back and look at the original concern. What happened? Large amount of trash in a shipping container, for example. We can have it follow a simple or a bit more sophisticated flow. We can have it open in 2 places. As we hover, we see who acted on things. In this case, the starter, someone identified the issue in my organization. Here's what the supplier is doing. And we've asked them for a root cause analysis. And then what are they doing to correct? And eventually, if we wanted, we could have added preventative action. So we want to be able to get our arms around these issues and have that automated, so it doesn't rely on an email that, again, did I miss an email? Well, this stays active, and we can see who's responsible to continue looking after, in this case, recording a cost or a chargeback to a supplier. And as we noted here in this particular template example form, did we have to do rework that we want to recover costs? Is there scrap that the supplier, in discussion with our SQEs, said, nope, not worth shipping back, the 20 pieces that you found? Or if the shipping container had so much trash that it was all scrap and it's not worth sorting through, how much is that? So we can assign those costs and have a total. And eventually we can also keep track of what got recovered from the supplier. So all of this can be reported on because this screen is embedded in the database. We can report on any or all of these in a separate report if we see fit. All right. When it comes to the return material authorizations, if the corrective action calls for it, we need to ship back to the supplier. We can have a list of the RMAs. We can have the RMA number that's been given to us, and we can go farther into that analysis if we see fit. We can take a look at that. We could have this listed by supplier, but certainly we can see who we're talking with. And the other thing would be particularly who the supplier is. So any and all of those things are available to us to report here on these screens. And that, again, brings that key information back out. All right. The other area that we wanted to focus on is supplier risk. And we'll come back to these supplier-initiated requests in a moment, because that's the other time saver. But in this case, we can determine key dimensions of what we would consider potential risk with a supplier. So for each of these, we can see an evaluation that the availability, their volume of product or service is, in this case, is good. It receives a ranking of 5. Business continuity, we would expect Abaco machines to be doing well. And this could all be the results of external and internal surveys. Financial, did someone have the opportunity, and is there an agreement with a supplier to review at least a high-level balance sheet and income statement? Or do you just rely on a DUNS or some industry evaluation of them? Legal, do you have any outstanding legal issues with them? In this case, it's all green, so we would anticipate none. And then where numbers and thresholds begin to reach levels that we're a bit concerned, we can have those become yellow. So here, a rating of 4 in any one of these dimensions is a yellow result using the traffic light type evaluation. And then when it reaches 2 or 3, for example, we can put them into red, in which case we probably want to have some business process, a team, or at least an individual, whoever that is, a buyer, an SQE, someone from the controller's office who's worried about the financials, working with a buyer, purchasing agent, for example, from our organization. And we can evaluate them. We can also sort them, and we can limit this. So let's look at the ones that are particularly red, that have red. Well, these are the ones that have red evaluations. All I did was click, and so it essentially got a drill down. We could have a link here to that kind of overarching supplier dashboard that we noted earlier. And we can begin a process by which we would like to see remediation or corrective action. and then ultimately long-term preventative activity to assure that someone is in good shape. And very important in these days of dynamic shifting supply lines and supply chains. So something that we can do, again, back to that original onboarding, if we have to source someone, maybe we worked with them, but it was 10 years ago. We may want to do that evaluation, and we can add these criteria to it. But on the other hand, if we have someone that is questionable, even domestic, we could do that. But if I want to undo that, I just click this and it cancels that special searching capability. And we can do the same with the yellow rankings. There are several of them here that have something that we would consider significant. So colorful, we can set these thresholds, and that's important. Again, we may have some that, like, are we worried that Microsoft is going for this? But not to say that that would be typical, but are we worried that Microsoft will not have continuity? We probably would put them at a 4 or 5 always. By definition, they're significant enough. A large provider like Michelin, again, they could have supply problems, but business continuity not likely an issue, and we may have some issues we're working out with them from a legal standpoint. Again, not particular. These are just example names, but we would want to be able to have a quick dashboard, if you will, or portal review. Last area that I believe would be significant from a day-to-day management standpoint, if we make available, and we'll take a look at a supplier portal here in just a moment. Suppliers can have requests. We can start a request if we're just in conversation and there's a price change that we've discussed with them. They could also come to their portal and put a price request change. Usually, and I believe we would all agree, price changes tend to be upside. They tend to go up. There's an increase, but it is possible that it could come down. If your supply chain landed cost is from a much nearer supplier, that could bring it down. If it is domestic, some of the raw material costs may go up, but the supply chain logistics costs could go down. So there's some things that could feed whether this is an up or down situation. Why has this been submitted by the supplier? How are we doing on a review, and what's the status of that review? Again, nice to be able to see this quickly, and we could have the same for perhaps more technical changes like engineering changes. See, this is also being refreshed. So this is the latest data available. And we can drill in and look at the form and see all of that, but this is the summary of what's present. Again, a deadline for review, like if the supplier says, if you can give me an answer by the end of September, we can, provide you 3 months worth of faster delivery. We can improve the supply. We can, maybe it is tied in with a price to your organization. So a lot of information can be brought to the surface, and we can look by supplier. We can see, that there happens to be a couple for a particular supplier, in this case, Scheffler AG. And as a result, we can focus as we need to. I'm going to remove that search criteria or that limiting filter. So now let's take a look when it comes to a particular supplier who's logging in. I'm going to bring this over. So if I'm a supplier and I'm logging in this case, we logged in someone named Felipe Fisher, who's linked to a supplier. We'll make this fill the screen. So we can have different portals that can be quickly configured. If a supplier was providing calibrations, we can see how that's being reported to us. A PO status, we can have the supplier scorecard again, very much like, so for supplier 2, this is as they're shipping to different plants for us and different commodities to us, we can see how they're being rated. So that's a quick view to them of how we assess their status with us. They should be paying attention when they see a color change, for example. Do you have to have color changes? No, but it's handy, we think, the red, green, yellow, very handy. We can look at the PO status that I referenced that was available. And so we're providing them a view of how things are going with the PO. We could have something that is indeed, an active PO, or it could be pending for release. How many times have we gotten multiple emails and phone calls? Hey, have you gotten that PO out to us? Have you gotten the PO out to us? What's going on with the PO? Well, if you choose, you can show them the status and or the PO itself with whatever information. So again, that's your discretion as a user, but in this case, it could be reviewed with them. So we can see and provide them the total of all those POs. In this particular case, 9,000, about 800, and about 1,250. A total of that, we can see what's going on with the status of those releases of the POs. We can always have them see this, but if we go back to the supplier portal, as we would call it, which is a general overview, this general overview is something that we can allow them to see their uniquely relevant documents that are in a particular category or folder. We can allow them to auto submit their own, for example, like an ECR type, but it could be logistics oriented, for example, to simplify and shorten the supply chain, if you will. It could be specifically for price adjustments. There are no surveys that are pending for them at this time. We can put out general announcements this way. We can push announcements from a standpoint of an email, but in this particular case, it's available to them. We could have an upcoming one, September 25th, who published it. And if we wish, we can show them the opportunity to launch requests, workflows. They could report their own quality issue or a delivery issue. They can push a button and it starts a process. But in this case, we could have something that is relative to a particular, and we can show them what their workflow looks like, and they can respond here and decide if it's appropriate step in the flow. They can respond and it would move forward. In this case, we're showing them a PO for O-rings. So there's a lot of flexibility here in this supplier portal, and they can accept it. So this could be a PO acknowledgement, for example. That would be something that we had to look after. Please acknowledge this PO, and then chase them afterwards. Well, it can be on their list with an initial announcement, and then it's in their to-do list. So, Kirsten, we're coming up on the end of the live example here. We've got supplier information in that view where they're logged in, and it's a limited view. They're not seeing all the records in the system. deciding what to show them. So this is their tool for interacting with you and with your requests. And then this is all for internal users that we covered so far today. So I believe we've covered all those 8 key points, but for a purpose. We want this information readily available to enable good decision making from fresh data, live, fresh data. With that,
Well,
I'll bring
thank
an end of my comments.
Thank you so much, Ed. You did an amazing job. I do have a couple questions, though, that I wanted to ask, if you could help me out.
Yes.
You did, is SoftExpert, do they offer on-premise, or is it a cloud-based solution?
It is both. We're finding heavy interest and use of our hosted. We utilize AWS hosting, and we're a recognized excellent supplier in that world as far as all sorts of things, including security, ISO 27001. So we are well recognized, and a lot of clients make use of that. But where it is necessary from policy standpoint to be on premises, we do work with clients from that deployment model, and suppliers can host their own. It is web-based, so if that is an internal on-premises, then it's web-based internally, or it's web-based externally. Same software, same capabilities.
Okay, I think we can take one more question. Let me ask you this. Is you mentioned in your presentation, you talked about ERP. So SoftExpert does have the capability of pushing and pulling from people's ERP systems?
Yes.
Okay. And how
Yes.
is that done?
We work with an initial implementation. We can do data migration of a lot of historical records. We also have web services that are real time. So if something happens in the ERP, a supplier has a failed quality assessment, a quality inspection, although we provide that inspection capability, but if they're already utilizing their own internal ERP receiving inspection and something is an anomaly, we can receive the notification of that anomaly and pull the data. And so it can go right into the supplier scorecard world as an issue. It can move into the SCAR world with our very flexible and interactive SCAR or NCR or whatever it might be called. We have a client who calls it DMR, Defective Material Report, and they want their suppliers to be involved. So it can come from the ERP. We also have a client we're working with now who wants us to be able to push when they finish, because they're doing statistical analysis in their labs of product in real time. And so when that particular job or work order closes out, we're pushing data over to their ERP, to a place that is intended to receive that result. And so we can go both ways in real time. It's web services. Some of you may have heard the term API. So we're very capable in that area. We have an extensive integration guide. It is many hundreds of pages, so it's very detailed and something that we're capable of working with.
So we did have a question in the chat, and I think you covered it, but it says, how do we acquire these modules? Does the system connect with your ERP, which you answered, we push and pull information, or would the data should be updated manually? So that's going to alleviate being updated manually, correct?
Yes, that's another point of risk, right? When data is well captured in a solution like SoftExpert, or it's well captured in ERP. Anytime someone says, well, we'll just manually send it, how many times have we, the proverbial, it's, fat finger reference, or, mistyping, or we leave a gap, we leave something out, the phone rings, and a notification pops up. Always good to have that automation going in the integration.
Awesome. I'm going to do one more question, Ed.
Sure.
So if I wanted to do the supplier, this is one of the questions that was in the chat. Like if I wanted to implement that, what's the timeline to implement the supplier module?
There are several factors that affect it. We've done some things very quickly across most of this scope within 60 days, 30 to 60 days for a small supplier list in a limited scope, if you will. So we want to provide suppliers documents. We want to handle the corrective action reporting, and we want to maintain the approved supplier list. That's more 30 to 60 days. If we have the full spectrum here, it's a lot of information that we're needing to decide with our client to how we want to organize it and what reporting is needed. Then it can take 60 to 90 to 120 days. And always the supplier, our client's participation is an important factor. So if they're involved and working with us step by step, it keeps it moving very nicely. It would be more toward a few months rather than forever. I've been involved in some implementations in my past that something goes on for years and years. Always good to bring it to conclusion quickly.
Well, I appreciate your time today, Ed. I want to thank everybody that's joined us virtually. We really appreciate it. But before we wrap up, I'd like to ask you to take a minute. We're always striving to improve. So we'd appreciate if you could complete our satisfaction survey, which is available on the screen now. It's just a quick survey, just helps us know what we're doing right or wrong. Also, take a chance, look at SoftExpert on social media, check out our upcoming events, and we'll have other webinars coming up. Thank you so much for your participation, and we will see you next time.
All the best.